Well, hello and welcome to stage 6, the expert meeting. So what I'm going to outline for you is a way of unlocking most of your long-term opportunities, transitioning people who are potentially not that interested in meeting with you now or don't perceive that they have a problem, or people who you really want to speak to but you just can't get your foot in the door, you can't get to see them now. So this concept has added millions to multiple companies who have used it effectively to create a value-based relationship with their prospects. So where does it fit and what is it? So if you think back to the market metrics that I've shown you throughout this program, then concept that I've kind of described many times is like, at any one time in the marketplace, there's roughly, say, 10% of companies who believe that they understand the problems that they have, or the goals that they certainly understand the goals that they have and the limitations of the problems that they have in their organization, and who have decided what that potential solution is and who are actively seeking the marketplace. And that's where someone comes in for you via an inbound, or they've asked someone in your network who said, actually I know that consultant over there can help you. So they reasonably weigh down their buying decision process, and they've already potentially come to their own conclusion around what the best solution is. And then you have 30% when you do a more outbound approach. There's about 30% of the marketplace who are relatively open to a meeting, and all you have to do is give them a reason, and that's it. That's what this is about. So the 10% are generally when you've done your outbound, you've done your LinkedIn prospecting, you've done your outbound emails, direct mail, postcard, whatever it is, video email. These are the guys that come back and say, that seems like a perfect fit, or do you know what, we're grappling with that issue at the moment, can you give me a call? And then you can run through into the consultative sales process. However, the consultative sales process doesn't always work because you don't have any implied trust, credibility, that you're not seen as a valuable resource yet in their eyes. So this, for you, most of the people in this program, this expert meeting will help you tap into that 30%. You can also tap into the 60% of the marketplace, and that's people who really don't see a fit in working with you now or speaking to you now. They might have an existing vendor, they may be going through a major restructure, they may just be so busy, it's not on their radar. It's up to you how, I say it aggressively, and I don't mean that in a rah way, it just depends how much business you need. For a lot of clients, consultant clients, it's enough to just do the steps that we've taken in this program already to put a more proactive couple of initiatives in. Will give them more clients than they ever need, and that's that 10% of the marketplace. So a stretch would be to go out and talk to more of the people who reply back saying, call me in 12 months, that 30%. So you may never need to go past that, but the same concepts can open up more of the marketplace for you as well. So a lot of companies who need to hit the marketplace fast that I've worked with, they want to get major penetration into a marketplace as quickly as they possibly can, and they want to speak to the whole of the market. So the same strategy that I would suggest for you now is more applicable to the 30%, could also engage that 60% of the marketplace for you as well. Okay, so concept that we're going to run through is there's 2 levels of adding value in what we're going to look at. So we're going to be looking at creating what I call a compelling reason to meet now. And I've been trying to phrase that with some way where it can create a lovely sounding sentence, or Tony Robbins has his urban and lurban, emotional reasons to buy now, logical reasons to buy now, but I just can't get my mind together. But it's a compelling reason to meet now, and there's 2 ways that you can create that value-based meeting structure. So one at the top of the pyramid is tactical. So tactical is focusing in on what you actually do now, your meeting structure that you do now, but thinking about it more strategically about what value do you create in that meeting, the same meeting structure that you run now, and then pulling that back down into tactical articulation points of what you already give in that meeting. And that's very, very quick. So generally always point one of what I get clients to do is just spend some time tactically articulating the value in your current meeting structure, what you do now, so people can just see the value better. So if you've got any meetings coming up, you could be articulating that straight away. And then what underpins that is almost, stage 2 of this is strategic, which is redesigning your sales meeting to consciously add value to the people that you want to engage with. So we're going to start with tactical, transition through strategic, and show you how they all tie in together. And why would we do that? For years and years and years, I've been training telesales people, and it's always been very obvious why they're failing. And one of the first things that I would do going in is saying, okay, so if you think about the traditional telesales model, it was always internal telesales, external salespeople, and they were internal telesales, but were trying to create a meeting for the external salespeople. So going to companies all around the country, and the very first thing I'd say is, okay, so you're trying to set up meetings with senior directors for your salespeople to go in. So what value is it for that person to have the meeting? And that's like the very first question. Most people were stumped because they'd never been trained or shown how to articulate the value to the other person. It was always either, we'd like to come and see you about how we could place contracts with you or get your business, which, if the person isn't that way inclined, if it's not a pressing problem for him, he's not going to consider. Or they were trained around, he would like to come and see you and find out a little bit about your business and ask questions to understand what you got going on. And, and that was fine pre-internet. I remember a day selling when, there was no internet, and, you had to go in and find out about the industry and what problems they had, and and that was the whole point of the first sales meeting. But the reality is, if you're a consultant, if you're an expert in your field, that's not a position for you. You are by nature, you should know more about the industry and what's going on than they do. So what you've always had is a chasm. You have a chasm of value. You've got someone trying to call and set a meeting, and they don't understand the value or even what happens in that meeting. So that's the thing that I've always worked on over the years is closing that chasm. So having a clear reason to have that meeting. So compelling that even if people say, no, call me back in 12 months, you can say, no, there's a reason why we need to meet now. So here's a question for you. I really want you to consider this. So when I've read it out, pause the video and then think about it. So what value does a prospect get from a meeting with you now? Pause the video, think about it. Okay, welcome back. So what did you get? Come and share that with your Facebook group. Before you move into this course now and this section of the program. So what value does a prospect get from a meeting with you now? Go and share it with the Facebook group. And then once you've done that, also share how much would you comfortably charge for your first meeting, to the extent that you would walk out of your prospect's office, charging them and being confident that you've given them value. And I don't mean clients, I mean prospects. So you might jump in your car, travel for 3 hours to go and see someone. What value have you given them in that meeting? You may need to pause the video and ponder that one for a little while. Okay, so welcome back. So how do you get on with that one? It's quite a difficult concept for many consultants I speak to is, I've got to go meet them, I've got to understand them before I can make recommendations. But sometimes if you're trying to move a segment of the market that doesn't necessarily perceive a reason to meet with you, you have to create that reason. You have to give value in advance. Okay, so there's a couple of themes that we can look at about how you do that. And while I don't expressly in the structures that I'm going to show you say, right, this is how you do it for a curiosity, these are the themes that you can be thinking of. So one is curiosity, and if you've had any engagement with with me in terms of the sales process, and you've looked at my SPUR framework of conversation, you'll see I preface a lot of things with curiosity. I do it from a sales perspective for an outbound. I'm curious in the other people, but also what can you be doing in your first meeting to get people curious about the content? What can you be saying and positioning and structuring that meeting so that they are curious enough to want to hear that meeting, to want to see what you have to say? Another major theme is contrarian, and I'm sure I've covered this in other sections well enough, but just to reiterate that, how can you position that meeting maybe as a contrarian point of view, that everyone else in the market is zigging and you're saying no, you should zag. You're saying the exact opposite of everyone else. Therefore, you created such a position, a space, that they have to listen to you. How about fear? What I mean from this is not have their meeting or I'm going to send the bully boys round. It's the fear of missing out, or I believe as the youngsters today call it, which I am definitely not, is FOMO. Fear of missing out. How can you create a meeting so valuable that they say, look, it sounds great, but we need to speak to you in, come back to us in 12 months. And you say, no, actually, there's a reason why, a real good reason why I think we need to meet now. And here's it, because I put together this special workshop or presentation, however you call it, executive briefing, benchmarking study, and it covers this and this, and the results are this and this, and you really need to know that. How can you do it in such a way that they would actually be fearful of not knowing that information? And of course, how can you do it in a way that you are positioned as the experts at what you do, and they would need to see that because you are the logical expert to provide that information. So while I don't bring this out in the manual, there'll be a section around how you could do those, but think about these as themes to bring into your presentation structures. Look, because I don't know if you've ever come across this, it's the value of the word because. So one of the greatest kind of research-based sales books of all time is called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. It's a great book, but one of the things in that book is it demonstrates the power of because. And in sales it's called a reason why marketing or reason why selling. And it was demonstrated that the Harvard psychologist Ellen Langer ran some tests, and she set up what's now prior to it being known, it was called behavioral economics. Now we know it as behavioral economics is kind of a new study, but back then. So she set up this experiment of what would happen. So it shows you how old he was because it's a photocopier or a Xerox machine, and I think it was in a university, and she got someone to push in to the front of the queue and then just say, excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the copy machine? So about 60% of people said yes, which is still astounds me. I wouldn't have said it. So the next phase of that trial was to run the same experiment, but say, look, may I use the Xerox machine because I'm in a rush? So that 60 then jumped up to 94%. But you could say, well, actually, there is a reason there. The reason is I'm in a rush. So they ran a third experiment, and that says, okay, so what about if I use the because, i.e., I want to do A and I have reason B, but I don't have a valid I want to do A because, and the validity of the because is weak. So what they brought up then is, hey, look, may I use a copier because I have to make some copies? And what they saw, there was only a 1% drop. And I think because of their test, I would say, it makes no difference. That's, the numbers would mean that's exactly the same. So what they're saying is not because of the reason that you give, it's the fact that you give a reason, and it's called reason why marketing, reason why selling. Everything that you say should have a strong because. However, even if you can't get a strong because, just giving a because will almost get you the same result. So what that means is, give someone the because or the reason why to meet with you now. And I probably haven't expressly said this, but look, the reason why you want to meet someone now instead of 6 months or 12 months is you cannot position yourself as the logical choice or the expert, or put them onto your drip marketing or your education-based marketing, or network your way inside that organization unless you get a meeting now. It's no good in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months time. Okay, so it's a concept that you may have seen me deliver before, is what is the level that you're selling at? So I've covered levels. You're selling at junior level, middle level, senior level. So this is a research undertaken by Keenan Flagler Business School and IBM, and it was into the buying process of the USA's top 500 organizations and the senior people within those organizations, laid out in time and involvement. And what it showed was the most senior people get heavily involved in the first 3 stages. So they're represented by these green graphs, bars. So they're looking to understand the current issues, establish objectives, and set long and short range business strategy. Establish long and short range business objectives. They then jump out of the process. And so those height is the amount of time they're involved in the process, when it's handed down to more junior people to explore the options open to them, to set supplier criteria, and to examine alternatives. And then they jump back in when they plan the implementation and evaluate the results. Did the project deliver on what it said? So if you haven't seen this and anywhere else, I also do a concept called the value bullseye, which is engaging those senior people in the evaluate the results phase, where you go back and prove what you've actually done. So what does that mean to us? Most inbound leads, I believe, come in this exploring options phase. So if you're a consultant, what that might do is they've already have a strong belief of what they think their challenge is and what the right solution they believe it is, and therefore they are looking for ways of serving that. There's some challenges with you in consulting. That could be where they found you via your website or inbound marketing, or they were looking for content on LinkedIn, or looking for white papers to help them. It could be where they've asked people in their network even and had a referral. But under the core of that is they already believe they know what has caused their problem, and they already believe they know what the solution is, and they come to you telling you the solution that they want. I want you to come in and run a workshop to do XYZ. I want you to come in on a day rate to do 12 days to deliver this. It may not be that that transparent, but generally it's a challenge to work with those organizations. It's a nice and easy sale. However, there may be a lot of limitations on what you can do with that organization. Whereas if we approach people, the holy grail for sales always has been, way before inbound marketing became well known, and the holy what everyone wants to do is to get to people early, to help them understand their current issues, to help them understand their long and short range business objectives, to be seen as a peer, to help them set their long and short range business strategy, and doing that is where you will really open up the market. Move yourself, if you're on a day rate, to more consulting projects, high value, that bear no relation to the amount of time that you put into it, and to command higher fees and to create better clients for yourself. And also avoiding the political nature of what we call the DMU. So the DMU is what's called a decision-making unit. Multiple people. If you've ever struggled with lots of different people in a buying process, sometimes it can be because you've gone into the process very late. If you've worked with the most senior person or the couple of senior people right at the beginning, you almost bypass this middle section. However, be open and honest with yourself who you're dealing with. If you're not solving a strategic challenge, then you've got to be honest with yourself and say it's unlikely that you're going to be engaging the senior people in that organization. It could be more managerial level. So you have to reflect your desires to network into an organization with the reality of the level of the challenge that you're solving. Again, so if we know what's relevant and important for senior people, I like to keep things simple. If IBM, Target Marketing, and Keenan Flagler Business School have done this research for me, why would I complicate it and try and flower it up with different language? Therefore, for that tactical articulation of why someone would meet with you, I very often break it down into the three. So I just need to change out. So understand current issues, establish objectives, set strategy. So here the colouring has gone wrong. I'll change that on the slide. So you can pull that out into ways of articulation. So understanding current business issues. He'll give you some insight into what other market leading organisations are doing to mitigate the risk of emerging disrupting technology, for example. Business objectives. He can walk you through some of the ingenious ways our clients are restructuring their operations to benefit from maybe some new ideas, some perspectives to influence their business objectives. And then obviously the third one is set strategy. So he can give you 3 direct ways you can take that information to set a HR strategy, an IT strategy, a new product launch strategy for your business that will impact the short and long range ability to deliver XYZ. So all I've done is taken what I know the most senior people are looking for and put it in a way that references what we're doing. And I hope that makes sense. I'm going to flow through again. Keep it simple. If that's what they want, give it to them. So the text here is just turning what you already do potentially in a meeting and putting it in a way that's relevant for them. So here's a few ones that you can use, and I've given you these as what I call swipe and deploy. So just copy and paste them and work on them. So it'll give you some very specific insights into what other companies in their industry are doing to mitigate, reduce, stop the risk of what's the biggest business risk to them at the moment. And at a senior level, it's competitive positioning, ability to create stakeholder value, all of these higher common themes. He can walk you through some of the ingenious ways our clients are restructuring their operational departments, their IT departments, their financing, their HR, to benefit from cutting-edge technology, to reduce the risk and unpredictability of the prevailing risk they are facing, and to be more competitive in the whatever marketplace they're in. He can walk you through some of the ingenious ways consulting companies are restructuring, leveraging, reducing, innovating to reduce the risk and unpredictability of creating a go-to-market strategy or launching new products, or and helping them become more competitive in the marketplace and create longer or higher returns on shareholder value. He can walk you through some innovative ways consulting companies are. Okay, so slight deviation from the other one above. So here, if you notice, they all start with he, and that's just because where I take these from where my other consulting parts where I'm showing a segmented sales process. But I would, as you go through this process, think about how you can pull someone in to be selling these meetings for you rather than you doing them themselves. It's so highly scripted, so highly structured that you can bring someone in to do this for you. And if you're being positioned as the expert, then that can actually help your positioning if someone is setting these meetings for you. Ask in the support group, and I can give you some ideas about how you can do that and some resources about how you can do that. Okay, so so here's some examples that I've used. An insight into how some of the world's fastest growing companies are using innovative sales structures and processes for predictable sales growth. He can give you some examples and case studies as how some of those strategies can be used specifically in your business, and where possible, at least 3 things you can take away and quickly implement to address some of the challenges or goals you have in your business. Okay, so they're reasonably generic, but so essentially, these are the things that you're probably doing in your first meetings anyway. You're seeking to understand, you're relating it back to case studies and your expertise, you're giving them a couple of tips and pointers of things that you can do. So what you are doing is making it more relevant for them and better articulating it. Then at the end, you can then also add in what I call a section B, which is, so at the end, he'll give you a minimum of 3 actionable things you can implement yourself to within a few days without any further help from us. So there's this promise of leaving something tangible, if you like, or you have a meeting with me, it's going to be educational, but I will give you something that you can walk away with. So at the end, he'll give you a minimum of 3 actionable things you can implement yourself to stop the problem within a few days without any further help from us if you don't need it, or if we both feel that you don't need it. So it's helping them solve perhaps a smaller or minor part as a trade-off to having that educational based meeting. He'll also give you our 1-page checklist of the 12 critical things you need to look at to determine your exposure, risk, potential to benefit from. He'll provide you with hard copies of the research into the XYZ title of the presentation that you can distribute around the company. So I know I kind of say these, and I try to emphasize and overstretch, how important this is. But one company that, if you've been in my marketing material for any while, you may have heard me tell this story. It's not a direct client of mine. It was when I was in a consulting company, and we worked with quite a large IT organization, and they were really, really struggling to get first meetings with very, very senior global IT directors, predominantly the ones that were based in the UK, and they didn't want a meeting. They didn't see the value in knowing anything. Just come in and have a consultative sales meeting with us. And it was at that turning point many years ago where information was more easily available. Sales skills weren't necessarily as good as they should have been, and it was the position was I'd like to come in and have a meeting with you, and that was it. That was the transition of value, and it just wasn't enough. So what we did with our organization is we commissioned a third-party research company to create a research report about the impact of new and emerging technology to IT departments in large organizations. We got that research company, so I can't remember the figures, they paid that research company, say £40,000. We got that research company to then we got that research company to sell that research on their website for, say, £2,000. And that was part of our contract with them. However, we didn't ever expect them to sell any of it. That wasn't the point. It was so we could then prove a value. So what we could then do is, when we were speaking to those IT decision makers, we'd say, we'll give you insight into what other market leading tech companies are doing to do XYZ to mitigate the risk of ABC. But also, if nothing else, we will leave you with 10 copies of third-party research company who, of course, they knew independent research into the impact of new and emerging disruptive technology into the UK top 500 companies. They're selling that on their website for £2,000. We will leave you 10 copies of that. So if nothing else, that's £20,000 worth of third-party research that you can distribute around the company. So we went from closing something like 1 in 15 meetings to 9 out of 10 overnight, just by offering a value transaction. And you don't have to go out and spend $40,000 on independent research. However, the same concepts apply to the people that you want to be speaking to. Okay, so your action points. So 5 bullet point reasons for every target prospect as to why they should have a meeting with you. Go back through some of the tactical points that I've done and just say, okay, so You know, what are a couple of variations of the reasons why someone should have a meeting with you now, based on the strength of the meeting that you have now, what you deliver now, the structure of your meeting now? Okay, pause the video, go and do that. Okay, welcome back. So now you've done that, you've done the tactical part. I'm going to run you through the strategic part, and this is where it gets exciting and fun. It's hard work, but one of these executed, I was going to say perfectly executed, but I don't want to kind of set you up like that. One of these imperfectly executed, just by creating one of these, can be the foundation for all of the growth that you require in your business. You know, large companies are looking to scale, and I'm not saying you are. You may be a solo consultant. You only want 5-10 clients over the next couple of years. But large companies who are looking to scale understand the benefit of one value-based meeting like this, that they put every effort into, and make sure every prospect that they have in their marketplace sees this one meeting structure, educational-based meeting structure. And one of the people who's a key creator of this structure, if you like, is a chap called Chet Holmes, and I absolutely strongly recommend you get his book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. And it's a concept he created in there, and some of the bits from there I've taken and amended and made better. But you know, there's examples of organizations that have grown multi-million dollar companies based off one standard presentation, and it's nothing that you can't do. You've had every ability to do this. So let's have a look. You know, so a traditional content-based marketing funnel is, you know, as I've already alluded to, you know, they perform research. They know there is a problem that needs to be solved. You know, they look for free tip sheets, white papers, videos, kits. You know, what do I need to know? Then they establish buying criteria, so they recognize a need for a solution. Then they're looking for webinars, case studies, free samples, spec sheets, catalogs. What do I need it for? You know, why do I need it from you? Sorry. Then evaluating vendors. Prospect seeks a solution, so they're looking for trials, demos, consultations, estimates, quotes, limited times offers. Why should I buy now? But if you believe my model that I've created off the back of significant research by, you know, IBM, Keelan Flagler's Business School, Target Market Inc., and the concepts I've shown you there, the reality, that funnel fits in there. And it doesn't necessarily translate to what we need to be doing to bring on board more senior people and bring long-term change and involvement for our consulting projects. So again, what do they want? So I've already given you an insight into this and made you also think about be truthful about the level that you're targeting in an organization. Don't target higher than your solution creates, if you like, a position. However, don't undersell yourself. So one of the first things I do with most consultants I work with is get them to consider who they're positioning their first prospecting into and their solutions into. You know, a great example is anyone involved in HR consulting. HR consulting, whether that be leadership, development, assessments, behavioral style, they're all comfortable going in at the HR manager level. However, very few have the desire, the belief, and the will to want to go at a higher level in an organization. And it can be done. It's just creating your message to make it more relevant, because some of the things that you do absolutely have much higher value in an organization and relate to much more strategic positioning. So, you know, at a higher level, senior executives are predominantly driven by their competitive positioning. They need to understand the current market. You know, if you understand the current market better than they do, then you are an expert. They cannot see what the competition is doing. They cannot see how the competition is setting themselves up to be number one player in the next 2-3 years. These type of things. They're blinded by their inability to see what their competition is doing. If you can unlock that for them, they're fantastic. They're looking at their business issues, long and short range business issues, strategy, shareholder value, corporate reputation, All of these things are more likely to engage more senior people in an organization. However, if you're looking at more managerial level, be truthful and honest with yourself. There's nothing wrong with that, but I will question you why you're not going higher if it is relevant to do so. But at that managerial level, we should be more looking at benefits-led messages. And if you are looking to engage users, talking about shareholder value, corporate reputation, short and long-range business objectives will not get them on your site. So it's just knowing the level of education as to where your entry point is into an organization. Because think about it, most hard pitching salespeople, or even some consultants, this is how they generally start off. I'd like to come and see you and find out about your business and what problems you are having to see if we can help solve them. How do you think? Do you notice this in how you sell? And what's your belief about the ability to create business using this approach today? Unless you have a high degree of expert status, they know you, there's a lot of trust and rapport built, this isn't really going to get you far in today's modern world. As I've shown you already, this is just a slightly different facts of the 10, 30, 60. I think this one comes from Chet Holmes. He breaks it down a little differently. So he said, look, there's 10% desperate buyers. And this is why I've taken you through the 140 campaign, through the outreach, because it's that cherry picking. You're looking for those desperate buyers. Yes, there are some problems for those desperate buyers sometimes, because they may have already created the beliefs around what the ideal solution will look like, and they're trying to squeeze you into their belief around what that existing solution is like. And that is why, if you go down that route and take the consultative sales process, then I get you to question that and kind of open that back up again, so you're not being pigeonholed with nowhere to go. So they're saying there's 15% not so desperate buyers, and these are within my 30%, and he just calls it differently, 60% and 15% are hard no matter what you do. I'd say you may be great just working the 10%, but certainly both Chet and I believe, I call it the 30, the next 30, he calls it 15. However, you can develop enough trust and rapport to warm up the not so desperate, and even light a bit of fire to get them moving today. You can make yourself the natural choice when the not yets are ready, or accelerate their readiness. You can educate, answer objections, and reverse the risk for the soft no's, which often turns them into yeses. I check my source. I'm almost certain that's Chet Holmes' quote. I create so many resources based on things that I've read and studied that sometimes I miss the right attribution. So if you know that someone else, just let me know. But I'm almost certain that's Chet Holmes. So where can you get ideas? You may have this nailed already. You might be looking at it thinking, oh man, that research I did on, I did my MBA, I did my PhD, my research project that I did in XYZ, I've got this nailed already. However, sometimes if you're lacking in ideas, there's a concept called chunking up. So say your core expertise is sales training. You can chunk up or chunk down to create different offers to the marketplace. So, and the more senior you go in an organization, the more I would get you to think about chunking up, i.e. going to a higher level of abstraction. So if my concept that I wanted to sell, if you like, in an organization was sales training, then one of the educational pieces that I might think about is actually, while I'm not going to go and educate them on why sales training is an absolute necessity for your consulting business, it's too direct, if you like. It's almost what we call a leading, if you're in a conversation, it's what's called a leading statement. It's if I could show you that sales training was essential for your consulting business, you'd do business with me, wouldn't you? And that works and it's great, but sometimes it can come off as a little direct. So one way of avoiding that is to go to a higher level abstraction, to chunk up. So that could be how to recruit the best graduates. So one of the things in there is, consulting companies are struggling to recruit the best global graduates at the moment, and you could show that. One of the points is they're not involved with the right universities. One of the points is they're not showing that their recruitment and engagement process is too slow. And then another point might be that actually the best graduates in consulting now want to be seen as rainmakers. Therefore, they look for the ability to create sales, because they recognize that rainmakers are the highest paid people in consulting, or it's a fast track, it's a way that they can then set their own businesses up. So therefore, just one of those segments is going to be creating the need for your solution, if you like. Then after that, I can even chunk up higher. So here there's another level of abstraction, which is field sales are not needed. So here, if it's sales training, actually this is a more process-led approach now. Is most people have telesales people, internal sales or external sales. And with the modern this educational piece could be with the modern technologies that exist today, you actually don't need external salespeople. You don't need to pay for their cars. You don't need to pay for their salaries. They're not that productive. And you can replace them. You could get 5 internal salespeople for the cost of 1 external sales person, and increase your revenue by a factor of 5. With much lower overheads. So therefore, it's a different message. But again, within that, there would be a need to how do you recruit these people? How do you train them? Obviously, the training requirements are very different. It's a different structure. And then you could even go more abstract about, emerging technology will replace salespeople altogether. Yeah, and that could be, a high scare tactic. If you're following traditional models of selling, then in a couple of years' time, your competition will be replacing their salespeople altogether with artificial intelligence. They'll be doing it this, and this. However, there's an opportunity for you to be different. If you restructured your sales model, if you recruited the best people, if you gave them the right training, then you could be the leading advocate of, personal relationships in the industry. So what you've done now is you've taken your message about sales training and created a number of different abstractions of educational piece that you can use to sell your sales training. And I hope that makes sense. I hope I explained that okay, because this is, so powerful. I don't know what to do. Sometimes I think, I should be sitting here with, a rattle and a one of those little whistles you get at sports events and things, and blow it, and so to really get across how vitally important this is in helping you create as much business as you want. However, it doesn't always need to be that complex. Sometimes you can chunk down, and especially if you've never been to the market before, because sometimes it's okay to make offers to the marketplace, especially if you've already spoken to people in the marketplace. You don't need all these convoluted systems. In fact, you should shake it up a little. So if it's sales training, look, you could say, okay, every now and again you could go out with a message specifically around prospecting, which is a core part of sales training. Or you could go out with a message that just focusing really in on prospecting with LinkedIn, or even then specifically prospecting with LinkedIn groups, or even an offer which is to get them to become a customer, which is 50% off LinkedIn group training. And there's nothing wrong with those approaches as well. Probably the more junior you go in the organization, the more those chunking down are relevant, and the more engagement you have with them over time. So lots of different ideas. It doesn't have to be these big educational ideas. Once you've got engagement, you can have much more specific, especially if you're trying to engage different departments in a large company. At some levels you could be educating some of them on a higher chunk up, and some of them you could be educating them on a much more lower chunk down. So lots of different ways you can do it. Where can you get the content? Where do you get the structures? So first thing is benchmark studies. One you can do yourself. So with the technology and the skill set that I've given you with the 140 campaign, with the outbound emails and video emails, and even the co-creation stuff and all of that, you could be doing your own benchmark studies. You could, but and not only that, you could be repurposing all that content as well. So you could be doing benchmark interviews, which you could also be doing as podcasts, which you could also be, so you could create your own. Or you can go to third-party organisations and pay and fund that, depending on what size of business and your appetite for investment is. Or you could pull together other benchmark studies, and that's a key one really, where most people start out is, the expert in an industry doesn't create the content. What they do is they collate, refine, and look at distinctions between all of the other benchmark studies and content that are out there. And again, case studies, a great way of doing it. People want to know what other people are doing in their industry. However, if you're going to take this approach, it cannot be, hey, here's a bland case study, here's why we're great. It has to be around, here's the problem that they were in, here's what they've tried that's worked, here's what they've tried that's failed. Think about it. The case study is almost the consultative sales approach. Here's the problem they were in, use the same structure that I've given you. Here's the problem that they're in, here's what they've tried that's worked, here's what they've tried that failed, this was the financial impact, these were the things that they were thinking about that would get in their way and that would block them, here's eventually why they broke out of their inertia and took this decisive action, here's what they implemented, here's the structure we use, here's some of the IPR we created, and here's the results that they've got. 2 or 3 good ones of those are worth their weight in gold. Again, interviewing the key prospects, a little bit like the benchmark study one. So that can be a more personal insight, what they believe is the future of the industry, that type of approach, which you could use to educate, or other key experts, if it's safe to do so and not devaluing your position as an expert. And that's the key thing. I see many experts who want to do this, engage with companies. All of their content is sharing other experts. And while no one, in presentations like this, in your educational content, draw on research. Absolutely, you cannot do this alone. The more you draw on research and cite your studies and your resources, actually the better you look, the more you're seen as the expert. But if all you're ever sharing is other people's stuff, then ultimately you're devaluing your position. Piecing together multiple data sources, again, a little bit like the benchmark studies, pulling together disparate bits of information that you found. So vision, future trends and predictions, it's a big one. What are your predictions for 2019, the future of the XYZ industry in 2019? Everyone wants to see what's coming, and very few people have the ability to do that. And this is one, I've never done, and I've not got any of my clients to do, but I think it's a fantastic one if anyone did it. And the reason I thought of this is through my own personal experience, is fund an MBA or a master's or a PhD who has to create a dissertation. So I created a dissertation, and it's been for my MBA, and one of the things I did was something like a 20,000, I can't remember, 10 or 20,000 word dissertation that I got a distinction on, and it took me so much time, so much research, pre-internet, so Christ, it was hard work, and it was about new product development. I took some nuggets out of there that formulated my entire ethos and strategy going forward for the rest of my sales career. However, other than that, I never used it. It wasn't relevant to the business I was in, really, and I've had no commercial value out of it. However, we're in an age where information is transitioned and people want specific stuff. So, if you know a great university nearby you, or you can find people online, you can fund an MBA or a master's or a PhD if it's ethical to do so, obviously, and fund their research into their dissertation, as long as it meets the criteria for both their degree and what you need for your educational content. A couple of thousand a year to do that is good. If it takes them a year to do it, and they do something that you have ownership of, with in-depth research, with the research rigidity of structure of an MBA or a master's or a PhD in something, for me, I think that's a massive investment. Even if you split ownership of it afterwards, they can go and create their expert position off the back of it, and you have the ability to use it to create sales for you. So for me, this is a very, very under-tapped approach, and I'd love to bounce ideas off you about how you can do that. I think that one there is a massive, massive opportunity for consulting companies. Okay, so can you offer your prospects some value completely outside of your product or service? That's the question. Something that is important to them, not necessarily important to you. So move away from maybe what their perspective is and what their experience is with other people. So, I want to come and talk to you about my service. No thanks. I'm happy with my current solution. Thank you very much. So the solution is, as I've shown, is to create an educational piece that the prospect cannot say no to, no matter what their perception and beliefs. I've shown you a lot about beliefs are of their existing circumstances. In fact, I spoke to a client only yesterday, and he worked out that they've got about 1,000 companies that can ever do business for one of his solutions. So therefore, it showed him this concept. And though out of those 1,000 companies, he helps them with specific projects. Those projects are not constant. They come and go. So even if he's got a great relationship with a small number of them, they may not have projects for him to work on. And then the new ones that he was approaching, is how do they know whether he's good or not? Because there's an element of risk. It was something to do with, had a legal impact as well. So how do they know if he's good enough? And I was kind of showing them this concept. And I said, look, if you create this educational piece, one, you're engaging people now, not when they have a project. So therefore, you then have all of the time that it takes, for when the next project comes in, to position yourself as the logical choice. If your content and the way that you do this is so good, you are removing any inherent belief of the risk that you are a safe pair of hands. So when those next because his belief was one of the reasons they were waiting, it was just for a small project that didn't have high visibility. Therefore, if they gave it to him, it was okay. Even if he does mess it up a little, it's not going to fall back and kick us in the backside. Whereas we showed him how to, I showed him how to think like this, and it's like, oh yeah, so I can meet all of those 1,000 companies now. And by the nature of this content, I can get a meeting with them now and demonstrate to them my expertise, and then pulls out all the risk, and it's like light bulb moment going off for him. It's wow. And then you combine that with the ability to create a low front end offer to cash flow some of these initiatives, and to get creeping commitment, and to navigate your way through those organizations. And I've got a separate bonus training shows you how to do that. Then it all becomes pretty magical. So I call it the CRTMN. And if you can think of a better way of making that sound sexy, then come back to me and let me know, and I'll change it. So it's develop your compelling reason to meet now. I must stress now, not in 6 months, not in 12 months. Your compelling reason to meet now. Okay, so a couple of different kind of titles or approaches, if you like, that you could take. So some of these are heavily influenced by Chet Holmes's stuff, and back then when Chet was doing it, there wasn't a lot of inbound marketing. So in many ways, although he was direct selling, he was one of the masters of the inbound marketing movement as well, because he called it the educational sales perspective. But this is how a traditional salesperson might have pitched things before. So the before and the after. So we'd like to come and talk to you about our healthcare benefits, whereas after could be the 5 dangers facing all employers and how knowing what those dangers are can dramatically reduce costs and increase profits. We'd like to come and talk to you about getting a new telephone system. So how you're wasting money in 5 major areas of your voice and data spending. So we'd like to come and talk to you about emergency disaster recovery. So the 5 most industry disruptive emerging technologies most CTOs don't know, and how they can impact UK market effectiveness or competitiveness. Okay, cool. So, and that's what we're going to be looking at doing in your educational content, is that sexy results based. You've done a lot of work. If you think back to stage 1, where do you think this is all kind of coming from? Why did I get you to do all that work in stage 1? It's so you can create these things. You understand the afters. So this is all relating to their pain points and showing them the brighter future. So, some bad news that you can use as a theme. So, the market is shrinking. Competition is increasing. Failure rates are increasing. Billing and profit is reducing. There's new entrants into the marketplace. Market entry time is extending for products or services. However, as much as I've said give them value outside of what your core service is, you have to have a link to setting up a need for your services. So if you think about the sales training example that I gave you, all level of higher chunking up abstraction, I made sure I was always looking at how I could bring that back to creating a need for my services. If you believe that that information I've given you is right, then by nature of that, you also have to believe that you have to invest in sales training. And that is what we're looking to do. So, what is the prospect's number one current buying criteria? Because we've talked a lot about beliefs. What do they believe their number one current buying criteria is? And how can you deliver bad news that will help them transition away from that current belief? How about some good news? So there's a vision to move forward to that isn't just a solution pitch. So it's not, hey, there's all that bad stuff. However, there's this brighter future over here, and the only way you can get it is to buy my stuff. It's not necessarily like that. It's more subtle than that. Excuse me. So what we're looking at is belief changes. We've done a lot of work in this section and previously about belief changes. So here's an example for you. So a belief change, if I wanted to create a belief change in a presentation, I could look at this type of structure. Okay, and this could be the content or one part of the content of my educational value-based meeting. So a market that you perceive, i.e. you as the consultant, to be price-driven can be educated to be expertise-driven. And you could do that by educational content around the cost of misbuying, the cost of doing things twice, the cost of renewals, fines, downtime, legislation, missed opportunities to win clients, to win deals, to get investment, to expand into other markets, speed to market, as it lengthened their time to market as opposed to decreasing their time to market, and of course fines and legal ramifications. So they could be some simple belief changes I would need to address. What about a market that believes you can't get easy access to senior decision makers? So this may be you, and this is kind of one of mine that I've worked on over the years for presentations. So my belief change example that I want to create is I'm approaching consultants who believe that you cannot get easy access to senior decision makers. So what steps would I need to go through to make that belief change? So first of all, confirm the old belief with old research. So there's no point saying, look, what you believe is shite and you're an idiot. You cannot do that. So you have to confirm their belief. You have to show that you understand what they are currently thinking. So it's called, show me you know me. It's called, addressing the conversation going on in their mind. But the key is it's their old belief, or it's their current belief that we want to make old. So maybe I should change that to confirm current belief with old research. You can show them how 10 years ago that may have been the case. So you believe that you can't get access to senior decision makers. Yeah, and that might have been the case because you needed a team of cold callers. That was the only way to do it, and you had to employ them, the skills to learn how to cold call, and the nuances were hard. It goes against your personality style. You didn't want to do it. Here's the research that backs that up. But then I could transition to new research. That was the old stuff. But look at this. This is the new research, and that could be around, changing marketplace, the way we communicate as a society have changed. The percentage of senior executives who have a corner office has almost decreased to zero. The percentage of people now who have open plan offices, so the ability to get to people, i.e. the structure of politics and organizational structures change. People don't have direct office-based phones anymore. It's all mobile. Move from landlines to LinkedIn, to chat, to email, to those type. So I could use research to show that actually no, it's different, and it's percentage of people getting through to senior executives now has changed. Then I could show maybe some third-party research, not my own research, to show that actually senior executives want to be approached, they want to be educated, they want to be challenged, and in fact they need contrarian points of views. No one in their organization stands up and disagrees with them. No one is saying we have to break out this blinkered approach. So actually they want you to do it. Not only is it a shift in communication preferences, it's a shift in attitudes. They want you to approach them. Therefore, I can also then back that up with most research that shows that most junior salespeople don't contact senior people. They're scared to do so. They don't believe they have the skills. They don't value their positioning enough. And I've got lots of studies and research that can back that up. Then I could show some tools to make it easy. So I could show a tool to find any CEO's email address, a simple tool about how you could create a video-based email that shows your expertise, a simple script of how you structure it, or a monitoring trigger events to find out when that person has just came into the company, or when they're making a major purchase decision or a major upheaval. Therefore, if I do that, what's the logical conclusion? It's easy to do. They want it, therefore you can and should do it. So I've gone in a couple of slides from, their belief is a market that believes you can't get easy access to senior decision makers. They say, look, that's an old belief. Replace it with this new belief based on research. And there's other research that says, well, actually the people that that you believe that about actually want you to contact them. Other people aren't doing it, therefore there's an opportunity. And look how easy it is to do. So the conclusion is that it's easy to do. They want you to do it. You can do it. And actually what I could do here is put another slide in and show examples of other consultants that have done it. Therefore, if those other consultants can do it and every factor else is right, you can do it and you should do it. And again, the same type of thing for one of mine is a belief change around a market that believes you only need inbound lead generation. So therefore, I've got studies that show up, the makeup of inbound versus outbound lead generation of best-in-class companies by third-party research companies show that some of the fastest most profitable companies in the US have a mix of 80% outbound and 20% inbound lead generation. So all the noise around inbound, the most profitable and fastest growing companies still have 80% outbound lead generation. Third-party research. But I could, following the previous one, I could show research that would show them why they think that, or even show them how much of the blogosphere and Google News and all that is dominated by people creating content around why you need inbound lead generation as my first one to back up their existing belief, but then also make them draw the conclusion that the reason they're doing all that is because that's what they do, whereas other companies are quietly getting on with outbound lead gen and they're the ones that are winning the best in class. Fastest growing company stats, most of the US fastest growing companies are using predominantly outbound sales processes. Show the buying processes, as I've shown you. If you want to engage senior people, you've got to be doing outbound. If they're waiting for them to come to you, they're going to pigeonhole you in this decision-making unit. They're going to tell you exactly how you're going to work with them. They're going to tell you what they want. Therefore, you're not accessing senior people. Look at the results of the percentage of your inbound leads that convert and what's the revenue potential. Profit margins on inbound are low because they already know what they want and they're price shopping. And then all of these can combine to how easy it is. So it's just a massive opportunity. So that could be an educational piece in its own right there. There's some bad news. And the bad news is, look, it does take work. I never said all of this is going to be easy, but to think through this and create this, it takes a little bit of work and time and effort. But the results will pay back for you in bucket loads. So here's the Chet Holmes model. I don't think you necessarily need to this extent anymore. And this was, a lot more detailed when the internet wasn't quite as high impact as it is now. But Chet Holmes' model, as he outlines in the Ultimate Sales Machine, is research your industry over a 30-year period. Identify bad news. How can it tie in with your solution? And identify patterns in all that data so you become an expert in your industry. And that's why very early on in these processes that we've been working together, so specialization, work in one industry, one segment, because it helps you become the expert. So therefore, a pattern could be, everyone is citing that unemployment has gone down over the last 20 years in the United States. However, when you break that down and look at the numbers, unemployment in over 30s white-collar men is up by 60%. If your target is 30-something white-collar men, then that is why you do that. Don't be listening to everyone else in the marketplace that's saying unemployment is down, or if you mid-20s say, and I've never kind of put this together why you would use this. Maybe if you're trying to sell an MBA course, it's like to mid-20s people. As a way of getting out of the fact that everyone else is saying unemployment is going down, it's a safe market. However, you're fast approaching a 30s white collar male in America, and unemployment has risen to over 60%. Transition out of that by doing this course, by learning these skills, by creating a business, by buying a franchise. You could use that for multiple different ways. So Chet actually started and grew a company that does this level of research. If you think that you need someone to do this for you, so I believe their minimum entry point is about $20,000. The ones that I've seen, I'm not that impressed with. I have to say, since unfortunately Chet died a number of years back. Sandlossi is a real great influence on the sales industry, but the company that is left that does that type of research, personally, I don't think a lot of the work that I've seen that they've done, and one or two of my clients have had it done. If you want that, then I can show you where to go. They're very good at doing these type of research pieces and packaging it up as a sales piece. But bear in mind, it's going to be an investment, I would guess, a minimum about 20,000. I get nothing. I prefer you not to go there personally, but if you do, I can kind of point you in the right direction and also speak offline about the relevancy of how that works with you. Or you can go to other resources. So you'll have this slide, and start pulling this stuff together. Business.com, Forbes, CNN, ABC News, Dole.gov, BLS.gov, so Census.gov. An easy one there is called BuzzSumo, so that brings content together. So it's an aggregation of content. FeedStats, Keynote, Mintel, there's just Census, Market Research, Euromonitor. So that's one way you could start looking at this yourself. However, look, if you're a consultant that's either working on a day rate or high value consulting projects, consider outsourcing this. And there's a website that I've shown you probably before called Upwork, and you will find amazing talent on there to do market research for you, as long as you're very clear around what it is that you're looking for them to do. So think about that, sponsor a student or maybe go out and get some market research there. So this one is called Upwork. There's also another one called People by the Hour. And here I'll have this in the manual for you. You can use something like this as a job advert. I won't read it out, but it's reasonably self-explanatory. So you place the advert, you potentially look for someone with experience in your industry or the industries that you're targeting. You let them come back to you to make a bid, either based on hours or overall project. interview 3, and probably what I would personally do as well is potentially give 2 people the job, but a small segment of the job, and look for which one is going to be a better fit. So I always try and hire 2 people to do one job, and if both do it brilliantly, then you've got a great problem. Okay, so just bear in mind, so I've shown you this when we do outbound. So how are we going to use this? So when you boil it down to the tactical side, when you do outbound prospecting, people will come back with warm responses. Sounds great. I need to meet you. It sounds perfect. And then you have referrers. People are referring you elsewhere in the organization. I've shown you how to deal with that. So this can be used in that section I call pipeline. They have an existing consulting company. They're under contract to someone that they perceive or believe is the same as you. It's not high priority for 6 months. We're too big for this type of consulting project. We're too small for this type of consulting project. It's not on our radar. We don't have any projects that we would use you with. This type of approach is how you break through and eradicate those beliefs about why they don't need to meet you, to create your compelling reason to meet now. So what's the structure? So your productized first meeting core message structure. So I hope you see by now, and I'm kind of taking you through the process, it's very different to how most consultants would do it in the first place, because most consultants would naturally lend themselves to content. I need to give them this content. I need to give them this content. I need to give them this content. And that's how they would structure it. But the reality is, if there isn't any belief that you're looking to change, you shouldn't be putting that content in, because our outcome here is more of a stepped or a stage gate sales process to move you to the next stage. So again, I'm going to give you an example. So outbound is too salesy, not in keeping with brand. So their current state, their desired state that I want them to be thinking is, when done properly, my brand can get great exposure and proactive business. In fact, I'm going to skip through that. I want to get into the content. So remember, senior people, if you're targeting them, looking to understand current issues, establish short and long range business objectives, set long and short range business strategy. So always have that on your mind if you're dealing with senior people. So I've created a presentation or an educational based structure for you, so you have it as an image, also a link to a solution called draw.io, which is a free online service, so you can change this. It links with Google Drive if you're a Google Drive user. So let's break down the core sections. So the title, so I've already given you title examples in this video. So the title should allude to the problems and the vision potentially. So how to, you're in this problem, here's the brighter solution. So there's title examples in this presentation, there's title examples in the manual, and I'll be working with you in the Facebook group to see how well you create those titles. You could then have a transition from the title slide to the core pain points and shock. It's called, in many instances, it's called a pattern interrupt. So here's the title, and then the next slide is, here's all the pain points. Here's all the impact of what's going on. Here's what I know about your business. Here is X, Y, Z. You got this, this, and this. You're struggling. And you could obviously make that relevant if you've had a call. So if you've run this after a consultative sales call, make it relevant, to really shock them. But instead of being timid about them, draw out, will leave nothing to the imagination, what the impact of that is going to be for their business. Then I would suggest 3 mini content segments, depending on how much time you have. If you have about 45-50 minutes, then that will enable you to get 3 decent content segments in. So what is a segment? So it's going to be mentioned in the manual, but they can be called different things. In the kind of internet marketing, shock and awe marketing world, they're called secrets, the 3 secrets around this area. You could call it pillars. So the 3 pillars to achieve XYZ. You could call it the 3 challenges. You could call them the 3 roadblocks. But whatever they are, whatever you call them, pillars is a good one, roadblocks, or I think you can't go wrong with pillars if you like. It's a strong, it cannot be misconstrued. Secrets, if you're comfortable doing that, the 3 secrets of how to create a high-performing team, whichever feels comfortable with your style and your audience. But the key thing below that is each one should address the core belief that you are looking to change. So that the title, you should have one belief, and we've done this, we've covered this in the belief video. There should be one belief that you want to change as a result of the presentation, and that belief is to get you to the next stage, to get them to take action for the next stage. Then you have 3 supporting beliefs. If I can knock down and get them to think about these 3 things and transition from one belief to another, that will logically mean that they then have to believe the overarching number 1 main belief. So these then are the 3 sub-beliefs. So whether it's 1 slide or 5 slides or 10 slides, however you want to present it, but it's showing the pain, showing that transition that I just showed you in my example where I had image-based slides, each one taking from, here's your existing belief, here's some research, and here is what the natural result of that belief is. So you contain each one. You then break that down into 3. Personally, I would do your strongest one as your first one, your second strongest one is your third one, and maybe the not so strongest one is your second one. You could even trial it with your strongest one as the third one. And I'm sure if there's presentation consultants in here, and people have studied this more than I, but it's the recency and immediacy principle. I think people remember the first and last and not so much the middle. So think about how you're going to position that. Also, what that also allows you to do is have so if you think about this structure, so in timing, you've got your front part, which might be 5 minutes intro, and you've got the close and the everything else at the end of it, which might be 10 minutes, and then your middle section is 30 minutes. Say that will give you 50 minutes. If you go somewhere and they say, look, our plans have changed, you only got half an hour, can you just cut it down to half an hour? You now know you can cut a whole segment chunk out. And in fact, it depends on if you do this a lot, you can have versions of the same presentation just based off 1 or 2 segments. So you can fire up one of those, and how would you do that? You would base it on what you know of the rank of importance of their beliefs and what you need to change. So if they said, look, you've only got half an hour, the first thing you ditch maybe is segment 2, which is the third least important belief to change. I hope that makes sense. So then, what about the future? So obviously you draw a picture of a brighter future, and some potential ways that they could get there. What are the restructuring they need to do? What's the different things? And obviously your solution would be in there, but maybe other solutions that they could be thinking of as well. But you have to give an opinion. So I created this right at the beginning. They are looking for you to be the expert. They are looking for you to give them an opinion. If you are bland and don't have an opinion, whether they like it or not is irrelevant. You have to give an opinion. So what do you believe about the industry? What's going to happen? What the future trends are, predictions? What do you believe they should do? Then the next phase is pre-handle the objections and close for the next step. And if you followed kind of my outline and you've created a lower value front end offer, then obviously the close for the next step is to get agreement for that lower value front end offer. And then you do all of that. How can you make it come alive so it's living and breathing? So in the overall sales structure, I showed you how to do a shock and awe package in the power section, about how to create a package that you send to them before the meeting. How about making the actual meeting come alive? How about things like this? So there's no way I think these were ever real, but they could become real. So these were images that I took off a website, and it was about a free opt-in, I think, that they were giving out, or part of a webinar that they were running. I can't really remember. But how to run your first personalization campaign. So these are images, and they created these images to make a largely intangible webinar to appear like a product. But man, can you see the power if you created something like this? It's a trade-off between investment and everything else. But if you're selling 50, 100, 200, 300, $500,000 plus consulting arrangements, and you can get something like this created for £20, and when you go into an organisation, there's 5 people there, so it's cost you £100. And you know that every time you run one of these and you blow their socks off, you're going to close 1 out of 3. It comes back to knowing the metrics. It's a cost of sale, and it's front loading the value that you're providing them. So how can you take your presentation and back it up with fact sheets, with implementation plans, and all of these things to really wow them and turn that into a strategic educational piece. Here's a couple more. It doesn't have to be kind of that box. Here's one. This is a low-level restaurant solutions forms. So that was a restaurant marketing guide, I think. So a guy that specialized. I found most of these on the internet. So that was a guy that specialized in restaurant marketing. So that's what he would give them. If he can do that and hand it out to restaurants, why can't you do that as a consultant with a high-value consulting deals? You can get these done. So that's another one I found that made me laugh. Terrorist use of internet assessment and responses. So it's not quite that big old bulky package, and but even other organisations are creating these things for in real life. So how can you create those? The resources I've given you: Upwork, Fiverr.com. There's another 99 designs. You can get these designed. Pull your data sheets, your fact sheets, pull all of that together, get them printed. You don't need a lot of it. You get something on a place like Etsy, which is like a craft place, but you can get some really weird and wonderful stuff created there as well. So how can you augment the messaging of your solution with something that's tangible, that will just make it come alive for the organization that you're selling to? So, hey, there you go. We've reached the end. It's one of the, if not probably the lengthiest video in the program, but what I've just given you will unlock any business that you want. And actually, you should now have a belief change that when someone says no to you about meeting you now, they may be your best prospect for high revenue consulting income, because it's the ones that are not engaging with people, or don't believe that they have a problem, or don't believe that they know the solution to their problem, that will be your best consulting clients. It takes a little bit of work, but I guarantee you can do it. Follow the structures that I've given you, and let me know the successes you get with this in the Facebook group. Hey, speak soon. Bye-bye.